Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the new Ford Raptor. Now we're actually going to have to talk about two different model years at this point. I'll explain more in today's video. So we're going to be talking about the 2021 Ford Raptor and then also the 2022 Ford Raptor as well. So first off, we're going to talk about the specs of the truck, what it's actually going to come with, at least what we know at this point. And then I'm going to talk about what this means for the Raptor and then whether or not you should actually order one. And with all that being said, let's get into the video. Now let's actually talk about the 2021 and 2022 Ford Raptor. Now the reason I'm naming two different model years is Ford recently announced that ordering will most likely open on June 10th, which is why I'm posting this video on June 10th, so that you guys can kind of like finally figure out if you want to order a Raptor or not. But with that being said, it's halfway through the year. Ford's only going to be able to produce a pretty limited number of 2021s, and so a lot of the orders that'll get put in will be 2022s. So they'll probably have, you know, the initial run, it'll be a few 2021s, and then a lot of them will be 2022s because, again, we're halfway through the year at this point. So that's why this is about the 2021 and the 2022. There's not really going to be any changes, I imagine, between the two model years. It's just going to be the model year difference, right? And so if you get a 2021, there's going to be a lot less of those. So I guess that you'll have that cool factor going for you. But aside from that, let's actually talk about the changes with the truck itself. So first off, the Raptor benefits from all of the changes that happened to the F-150 for the 2021 model year. So completely new interior, you get the big 12-inch screen, you get the digital gauge cluster, it's going to have new seats that come with it as well. And then on the exterior, right, you're going to have the new exterior styling, and I'll have photos throughout this video and obviously in the corner as well that'll show you all this stuff. But I don't want to spend too much time on that because it's not really the exciting stuff to me. But yeah, the Raptor benefits from all the changes you got with the regular F-150, so that's what's happening on that front. Now, aside from the changes that it gets from the regular F-150, the Raptor changes are probably the most exciting part. So first off, we are getting kind of a new exhaust system, right? So it still has the 3.5 liter EcoBoost, but it's got a 3-inch exhaust tip now, and they're changing things with the system. You guys have probably heard the audio clips where it sounds quite a bit different compared to the Gen 2 Raptor, and so it sounds like from the factory this truck's going to sound a lot beefier out of the exhaust, which I think is pretty cool. But again, going back to the powertrain, yes, they have pretty much confirmed it's still going to have the high output 3.5 liter EcoBoost. They're not going to do the hybrid as standard. I thought they might do that, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. Now, in terms of power outputs, they haven't really announced anything official. So the last generation had 450 horsepower and 510 pound-feet of torque. I imagine they'll increase the power outputs. If they don't, that doesn't really make sense because they increased the power outputs on the standard F-150 EcoBoost. It's now 400 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque, and so I imagine they're going to increase the power outputs on the high output. My personal guess, we'll see if I'm right, is that they're going to jump the horsepower up to 500 so they can say it's a 500 horsepower truck. And then I'm guessing the pound-feet of torque is going to be mid-5s to maybe low 600 range, but I'm guessing mid-5s. I'll probably keep it pretty conservative. We'll see what happens though. But that's for the powertrain, and then still 10-speed automatic transmission like they've had for quite some time, so that's not really changing. The other big changes though are to the suspension, shocks, and the tires. So first off, we'll start with the tires. You actually can get 37s from the factory now on the Raptor. 35s are still standard just like before, but there's an optional package that gives you 37s. Now, I was initially worried about these 37s because I was like, oh, well, if the truck's going to have 37s, it's not going to have as much travel, right? If you have more tire, then you're going to collide with the wheel well sooner. Ford has thought of this, and apparently, we'll see if this actually happens, they're actually changing the suspension with the trucks that have 37s from the factory, and so it's going to have just as much travel as if the truck had 35s, which I think is pretty cool, and that makes the 37s the most attractive option on the new Raptor because you're going to have just as much travel, but you're going to have more ground clearance, and you'll be able to get a little bit better grip, right? It's marginal, but you will be able to get a little bit better grip, and most importantly, it'll look cooler when you're at Costco parked amongst all the other Raptors that only have 35s, right? But yeah, I think that's really exciting. Now, the other changes are to the suspension and the shocks. So with the suspension, they're finally going to a 5-link coil system, which I'm really excited about. The leaf springs are okay, but that's not really good for off-roading, because with leaf springs you're going to have a bunch of side-to-side motion, whereas with the coil suspension it's going to stay a lot more planted, and also it's going to be smoother, which you want to have the truck planted and smooth when you are taking it off-road. So that's a huge update, and I think it's like the first F1, I might be wrong, let me know if I'm wrong in the comment section below, but I think it's the first F-150 with coil suspension ever. And then aside from that, Fox has developed new shocks for this new generation Raptor. It's their most advanced system ever, and I mean, me personally, I'm really excited about these shocks because I feel like Fox always does a really good job. I love the shocks in my Gen 2 Raptor. I had a 2020 with the live valve. I thought they were fantastic, and so I'm excited to see what they do in this new Raptor. But those are the basic specs. Now we'll quickly get into pricing, which is kind of crazy. So the base price is about $11,000 more than the previous generation. Now a big reason why the base price has increased so much is because you cannot get a super, yeah, I think it's called the super cab. I might be wrong on that. Sorry if I'm wrong on that, but you used to be able to get the Raptor with the regular front and then the shorter doors in the back. I think that's called the super cab. Sorry if I'm wrong. But now you can't get that. You can only get the Raptor with the Super Crew, so the bigger size cab, and so that's part of the reason why the truck starts off a lot more expensive. And then the other thing that hasn't been 100% confirmed but might be happening is that the Raptor might be all-wheel drive now for better grip purposes, right? You guys know with the new TRX that comes with the four-wheel auto as standard, so the TRX is pretty much all-wheel drive. It sounds like Ford might be doing the same thing with the Raptor, and so then that also kind of hikes up the price versus doing a traditional driveline system with a truck where it's two-wheel drive until you put it into four-wheel drive like the Gen 2 Raptor. And that thing I'm a little bit worried about as well, because part of the reason why the Gen 2 is so fun is you can get really tail happy with the truck because you can just leave it in two-wheel drive when you took it off-road and just do tons of drifting. But if it's got four-wheel drive from the factory, right, you won't be able to have as much fun. You'll still be able to do some stuff, but you will be more limited. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention earlier was the change in ground clearance with the 37s. It's now over 13 inches, which, yeah, just crazy. But what does this actually mean for the Raptor? So first off, this means that the new Raptor is going to be the most capable Raptor ever. It's going to have the best suspension, best shocks, best interior, and hopefully they increase the power so it'll be the fastest stock Raptor ever. I mean, I guess other than like a Hennessy, but I mean, that's technically not from Ford. But aside from all that stuff, this is going to be the most capable Raptor ever, and it's going to be the nicest Raptor ever. But there's a couple things that I'm worried about. So the first thing that I'm worried about is the fact that they still don't have a V8. Now, we have heard the rumors, and Ford's kind of like somewhat confirmed that they will be putting a V8 in the Raptor. They'll most likely put the GT500 engine in it, and I'm going to make a whole nother video about that. But here's the thing, is that's still not in production yet. And on top of that, it sounds like that's going to be a very limited number production truck. It's not going to be like the TRX. The TRX, Ram literally said in their advertising, if you want a TRX, we will build you one, right? They are going to build as many TRXs as people order. Whereas with this new GT500 Raptor, it doesn't sound like that. So most of the Raptors out there are still going to be the V6 trucks. Now, I love the V6. I love the lightweight front end that the V6 gives the truck, and then I like the characteristics of the engine. I like how it builds power. I actually like the sound of it, but I can understand a lot of truck people, they might not like that, so I am going to put that as a downside. But the biggest downside for me personally, and I feel like this is just objective, is the price increase with the Raptor. Now I understand all of the F-150s went up in price, but the new Raptor, after options, it's getting really expensive. And again, we don't have pricing 100% confirmed from Ford, but what it sounds like is a fully loaded Gen 3 is going to be around mid-80s, okay? Now, the reason that this is an issue is you can get a Ram TRX for about $70,000 base model. If you do a middle-of-the-line TRX, you're like 80 to 85. If you do a fully loaded TRX, you're $95,000. That's what I ordered personally. And if someone is cross-shopping a Raptor with the TRX and they go, oh, I can buy this 700 horsepower supercharged V8 truck for about the same price, or maybe only 5 to 10 grand more, versus this twin turbo V6 truck, which one are people going to lean a little bit more towards, right, from a value perspective? And the other thing I think about is most people don't take these trucks off-road. If you are looking at this from purely an off-road perspective, the Raptor makes more sense. It has a lighter front end, so turn-in's going to be better. It's going to have 37s from the factory, so it's going to have more ground clearance, and they're going to have more travel with this new Raptor, and it's going to have suspension that is just as good as the TRX because it's got 5-link coil suspension, and the shocks will be just as good because it's Fox's newest series. Like, from an off-roading perspective, the Raptor should completely demolish the TRX in every single category except maybe straight line acceleration, which when you're going off-road, that isn't important, right? What's important is what's your ground clearance, how grippy are your tires, what's the turn-in like with the vehicle, and how well are the shocks at absorbing everything, right? That's what's important. But when most of the people buy these trucks and they never take them off-road, if someone goes, oh, I can buy this truck that has this loud, obnoxious V8 that sounds fantastic and can just drag race everything and beat it, versus, oh, I can get this little twin-turbo V6 and they're about the same amount of money, I think it's going to push more people to go and buy the TRX just because of what people use these trucks for. And so yeah, I think it's kind of a little bit of a slippery slope, I guess, and I don't know, we'll see what official pricing ends up being, but that is my biggest worry with the Raptor, is where the pricing's at and where it puts itself price category wise, and also the fact that it sounds like the GT500 Raptor, that's what I'll just call it for this video's sake, is going to be limited production. And so it's like, not only is a regular Raptor going to be almost as expensive as a TRX, but if you want to get a Raptor that's similar in terms of the engine layout to a TRX, has a supercharged V8, then you're going to have to probably pay a stupid amount of money in dealer markup and everything because they're not going to make that many, or you probably won't even be able to get one. And so then, again, I feel like it's going to push more people to Ram just because of that. Now, should you order the Gen 3 Raptor? The short answer, yes. But let's explain why. So if you are looking, I guess, for a status symbol, it'll definitely be worth it. It'll be the cool new truck on the block. If you currently own a Gen 2 Raptor, it looks better, has a nicer interior, has more off-road capability, it's worth it. And yeah, that's just objectively, and trust me, even if you don't like the pictures, when you see it in person, you're gonna love how it looks compared to your Gen 2. Obviously, if you have some modifications on your Gen 2, you might be like, but trust me, if you put those same modifications on the Gen 3, then you're gonna be like, yep, it looks better. Now, aside from that, let's say that you don't own any of these off-road trucks, and this would be your first off-road truck. The Raptor is a great introduction into off-roading. It's so capable on so many different fronts, and especially if you get it with the 37-inch tires, even if you're the worst driver on the planet, it's so forgiving and it has so much capability that it'll kind of help you progress and become a better driver. So definitely worth it if you have the cash. Now, if you're in my category where you own a Ram TRX, should you trade your TRX for the Raptor? And kind of like I mentioned earlier, probably not. And I know that my friends at Ford are probably going to get upset at me just a little bit, but here's kind of my thinking on it. Again, it sounds like the pricing is going to be pretty close to the TRX, and most people that own TRXs currently, except for me and a few other people that I talk to, don't take them off-road whatsoever. And so all of that added off-road capability you get with the Gen 3 doesn't make any practical sense for you because your TRX is just a mall crawler. So why would you go and buy a truck that's more capable off-road if you're not going to use that off-road capability? And so for most TRX owners, the TRX, right, is going to be just as smooth on road. It has the supercharged V8, sounds fantastic, and it's just a really nice truck overall. The Gen 3 is a really nice truck, but doesn't have a supercharged V8, right? Now, for the small category of TRX owners that do actually take the truck off-road like me, it could potentially make sense if there are certain situations that you're driving in that you aren't really loving the dynamics of the TRX. So first off, if you come into a lot of situations where you don't have enough ground clearance, the new Raptor with the 37s, well, it's going to have more ground clearance, so obviously it makes sense to go that route. Or if you don't like the feeling that you have to deal with in terms of the front end weight, then it could make sense to get the Gen 3 because, again, with that EcoBoost, it's going to have a lighter front end. Now, it won't accelerate as fast, but again, that's not really as important off-road. What's more important is the ground clearance and the turn-in, and obviously the shocks and suspension as well. And here's at least my guess. Now, I would take this with a grain of salt because I obviously haven't driven a Gen 3 off-road. But here's what I'm going to assume is going to happen. If I drive both of them back to back, which hopefully that will be able to happen, hopefully Ford will send me a Gen 3 as a press car. If I drive them back to back, what I'm probably going to find is that the new Raptor is going to be a little bit easier to drive down trails. I'm going to be able to drive a little bit faster because of the lighter front end, right? It's going to have a little bit better handling, and the 37s with the higher ground clearance are going to make it so that I can go through dips and everything at a little bit of a higher speed because the front end won't come down as far, and then also, right, I have a bigger range as well with the front end. But I think that from the shock and suspension standpoint, I feel like it's going to be shockingly similar. See what I did there? The TRX shock and suspension system is absolutely fantastic. I feel like I proved that with the jump video that I did where the truck obviously didn't brake and it landed really smooth for how much air I actually caught, how fast I was going. If you guys are wondering, I was going almost 50 miles an hour in that jump clip, and in terms of like actual air, I think I was probably like 6 or 7 feet in the air, and then I don't know how much distance I traveled, but like that's a big jump, and the truck handled it great. And so I think that they're probably going to feel about the same in terms of smoothness. The Raptor is just going to turn in better, and it's going to have more ground clearance. And so unless you really need those for the off-road for what you're doing, it's probably not going to make sense to trade your TRX, because you're going to have more fun with the TRX on-road, and then it's going to be capable enough off-road that it'll meet all of your needs. Now that's going to sum things up for our video on the Gen 3 Raptor. I'm really excited about it, other than the price obviously, which is a little bit crazy, but we'll see what Ford ends up officially releasing for the pricing. But as always, if you're stopping in for the first time, I'd really appreciate if you'd subscribe, and then if you feel like my videos are of value to you, I'd really appreciate your support over on Patreon. I'll include a link to that in the description down below, and then I will see all of you guys in that next video.